Some time ago, when Shadow of the Colossus was being made, Evis was supposed to be the final boss of the game, but it was cut because of um, limitations of the game and, well, presumably the PS2 console and budget deadlines and actual deadlines they had to skip. So they had to skip everything along and make everything a little different. But for the longest time, a lot of people have often asked, like, well, what exactly is Evis supposed to be? And granted, you fight it in the mountains, and I honestly think it's supposed to be like a demonic goat, sort of. Because if you do remember when Shadow of the Colossus was supposed to be a much longer game, there was at least 27 colossi that we knew of. Maybe, well, actually 26, I believe. Um, at least. But with the ones that we got and that were cut, and the ones that we do have information on, it's safe to say that Dorm's 3D text model beta, it looked like what Evis would have looked like, but with all the other Colossi parts involved. And it kind of looks like it's a giant demonic goat that would have been super powerful, super heavy, super bulky. It's still debatable like what exactly the fight would have been like, but if we are to believe that Malice wouldn't have been the final boss and didn't even exist, it just would have been a beta version of Buddha, and then Evis was still the final boss. It's safe to say that it would have been somewhere out in the mountains, top right screen, and who knows how the fight would have worked or what the area leading up to it would have been like. I think a lot of the stuff was recycled for when Argo falls out in the beta dam. It kind of makes sense because if you go fight, was it Argus? I forget the previous Colossi before. It's supposed to be that Argus was supposed to be like kind of like a gatekeeper before Evis. But the thing is, it wasn't guarding the ruins. You still would have went around it to get to where Evis was, but it just would have been slightly different because we don't have all the maps filled in, so we don't really know what the details look like. And even if we do have it mapped out, it's still in a beta form, so we can only imagine what the designs would look like. So I think it's safe to say that, at least as of right now, if anything, Evis would have been a demonic mountain goat, because it wouldn't be the first time you're fighting like something like a devil in the game. That would have been one of the Colossi too. But at the same time though, Evis would have been like the biggest of them all. So we can only say that it would have made sense. It's a demonic goat because you're fighting like what Dorm's left form would have been like, and you also would have been fighting something that lives up in the mountains, because everything in Shadow of the Colossus is actually based on like something in real life, a different location or a realistic area. But at least as far as the story goes, and it's kind of dark if you think about it. Dorm was supposed to be finding a way back, and it was sealed in the Forbidden Lands. Its soul, first of all, its soul was split up, so this wasn't the first time it was fighting. And then at the same time, though, at the land it was sealed in, nobody was allowed to go to the Forbidden Lands. But somehow Dorm's conscious, while sealed away, was still able to interact with Wander, and that's why this whole thing ended up being the way it did. I still think the ending would have played out the same. It's just would have been different though. Before leading up to it. I still think that if Evis was supposed to be a giant mountain goat, the plains would have been very unbalanced. Even if you look at the beta design, and this is still debatable how the fight would have worked, what its weak points would have been. I think it would involve you having to run around it while it can shoot and stomp and stuff like that. I think Evis would have been the tallest colossi. I think it also would have been the hardest. Maybe not the hardest, like maybe not the biggest time consuming, but it's kind of debatable really what we would have done to have to either shoot it down if that's how you do it, or if you just had to climb a bunch of stuff to get to the top of its head, kind of like how you did with Argus. You could stand on, you had to still get Argus to interact with a couple things, but once you were on top of the castle ruins, you basically could jump on side of its head. I don't know how Evis would have worked. It just, if only we would have had like a complete arena, we would have been able to like make sense, because Evis wouldn't have been stationary. I think Malice would have been a lot easier in comparison, because the problem with Malice is Malice doesn't really move. Well, it doesn't move at all, really. It's just shooting you from a distance until you climb up it, and then you just get on top of its head, and it's just trying to strangle, or struggle to get you off of it. But Buddha would have been more interesting, and I think Buddha would have been better off. It just seemed like a better idea at the time, especially the sanctuary you fight it in. But yeah, there's that. So yeah, basically this is just to summarize. If you really think about it, Evis was just supposed to be a giant demonic goat, because there's not really too many other animals you think about at the time, especially in this importance of this game, where you think about what it could have been living up in the mountains, rather than what else can you find up there that it would have had. Like, because again, if you look at its feet, it looks like it's got hooves, and according to what we know about Dorm's head body looks like a giant thin goat, probably one that could stand up on its two legs. It kind of looks like a yeti, but at the same time, it's a goat. It's a demonic goat. Hence the symbolism behind it. So hopefully that kind of explains it a little bit better. And if I find any more information, I'll try to rationalize this. But right now, I kind of don't have the time to. So I'm just going to get right to the point. Evis would have been something like you fight it up in the mountains. It would have been a giant demonic goat or something along those lines. And while it's debatable how you would have fought it, I do think its weakness probably still would have been its head. Just because, you're scaling like the tallest colossi in the game, and it makes sense.